All right, I'm going to start by talking about questions 1 and 2. I did them together. So if I play this, I'm going to render 5 models. While that's loading up, I'll go in here. So I made 5 different models using this new shader that I made. So color select the 3D optimized. And you can see what I did was I made it so that now I'm just sending this one matrix, it's WVP. So that way in here in the vertex shader, all I have to do is multiply the position by the WVP matrix. I don't have to do that in the shader. To show you that I'm actually using it, I'll go into here. I have shader color optimized. You can see it's loading that HLSL. And if I go into the app, you can see I initialized that color selected 3D optimized somewhere down here. Yeah, right here. Now, like I mentioned, in order to minimize those multiplications, see, these are the 5 different world matrices. I get them at this during initialize. And then here in my draw scene, I calculate the view projection matrix once. And then when I send each world matrix, I send the world times that view projection matrix. Okay. For this next one, this is the one where I had to create the unit pyramid with the mapped texture. So this wasn't so bad. The main thing to keep in mind was that when I was creating the UV coordinates, I didn't want to send the top left and top right corners to this triangle. I wanted to send the middle of the top, right? So it kind of looks like it's the same as this image. It's not stretched out. It's just cut off at this part. So I had to make sure for this top vertex, I sent the coordinate 0.5x0 or 0.5u 0v. But yeah, otherwise it was just some busy work. For question 4, I was wrapping this cube in this new in this 6-sided texture or whatever. And this was a similar thing. It wasn't too bad. See, I got bottom, right, left, top, bottom, or back, bottom, and then forward. And this was really just the same. I mean, I'll just show this. It was really the same as doing the repeated texture. I mean, I just copied a lot of the stuff over. The only difference was in the repeated texture, we're just using UV values of 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. But in here, we have to dig a little bit deeper into the image. We have to use just parts of it. So, 0.25, 0.625, because all the images that we want are in different subsections of that one texture. For question 5, I had to make a shader class. So, or a texture shader, I mean. So, it's in here. So this was the header file that was given. I just added these cam matrices and world matrix. And then I mostly just moved a lot of the code from DXApp into here. The main things are we get this layout, we need text coord, but otherwise setting up the buffers is the same. We release the stuff the same. Sending the cam matrices and world matrices isn't a problem. These things are a little bit different, but not that different. This is basically just connecting our texture to. Well, I mean, this is again the same. We're setting it to context. This is the only thing that's really different from the other shaders, which is that we need to be sort of connected to our texture. And the reason why we can't do this in the texture directly is because we need to pass these parameters. They say what texture and sampler slot we should expect them to be in. And for our shader, and that's defined in the HLSL. So here I put 0, 0. If I go here into the texture HLSL, you can see I have T0, S0. Anyways, it's really nice. It felt really good doing this because it allowed me to clean up a lot of the code. Um, I go to init demo, and now it's only this long. It actually fits on one screen, which is beautiful. So it's just like initialize the shader texture, create the two textures, create two models, create a few world matrices. It actually feels a lot more high level now, which is great. It feels really good. And then draw scene is similarly pretty small. It's just just want to make sure I set that the shader texture up, set it to the context, and then first I send the camera. So these only need to be done once. And then first I set it to the first model's context. I set it to the first texture. I create the first two shapes using one of the textures and models. And then I set it to the other texture and the other model for the third one. So I'll play that here. It's taking a while. Yeah, so you see I have these three different cubes. These two use one texture, this uses the other. This is the the six-sided one, this is the repeated one. Okay, for further work one, I was asked to mess around with the different textures and different filterings. So right now I have the crate face, and if I look at the texture, I'm using wrap. Oh, and the other thing is, this is linear. So when I play this, it's going to be all one color. And that's because when we give it, because we're using our old, because we're just using the regular unit model, by default it has UV coordinates of 0, 0. So it's only sampling the top left texel. So if I go into crate face, it's just this one way up here. Now, because I'm doing linear, it will actually blend it. It'll do a linear interpolation of that top left pixel with the one to its right, and also to the one wrapped around, because I'm doing wrap. I'm doing this wrap address mode, and it's not really apparent here because these are all kind of brown, but it becomes really apparent in this other one, the test 512. So right, I've set as linear as wrap, and I'm gonna zoom in on this really quick because it's not obvious, but yeah. So you got this like pinkish color. Now, if whoa, see in the top left corner, I have this random red line. And we can actually see the texels if I zoom in even more. We need to go deeper. There we go. That's a little too much. Yeah, that's good enough. We can see the texels. So we have this red line. Because we're doing linear, it's pink. It's not that red. And so it's actually trying to linearly interpolate it with the stuff around it. So at the right side, it's still red. But at the bottom, if I go all the way down here, and remember, because this is wrap, so if I go to the bottom, which is taking a long time, I have this one white texel. So it's red and white, which makes it pink. Now, so if I change this from linear to point, it's just going to use that one red texel to color the whole thing. And so I've only talked about, yeah, see, it's just dark right now. So right now I've only talked about the wrap mode. I have a bunch of these set up. I'll just say right now that if I keep it as point, the address mode isn't going to matter. It's always just going to be dark red. Linear is where you start to see those interesting behaviors. So before we had with wrap, it's pink. If I do mirror, it's also basically, well, actually, let me think. I think it's going to be red again. Well, we might as well try it out. Yeah, it's red because it repeats what was at the top and on the left side, or the right side. Yeah, on the top and the left side. But you'll see border, it's going to mix red with that base colorless, the black color. So it's like a really dark, it's a darker red, a blacker red, I guess you could say. And it's a similar, and with clamp, I don't know exactly what it is. I could do a thought exercise, but I'll just show it. I feel like it might be red though. Yeah. All right. So that's further work 1. For further work 2, I was just supposed to try out some different things with rendering a bunch of objects, doing different performance tests. When I did this, I did it using the one where it sends the view. It does the multiplication of the view and the projection and world matrices in the GPU. So that's one thing to consider. But so for this first test, I just said, let's do everything in the loop. So all I'm doing here is I'm just rendering 10,000 cubes. I'm not even changing their position. They're just all in the same spot. And every time I do it, I'm setting the context. I'm setting the camera matrices. I'm setting the world matrix. So it's really blocky. You see, FPS is about 15. And every step I take something out. So this time I made sure that I set the context on the outside once, and I also send the camera matrices up only once. So now frames per second dipped. Now it goes up. I saw it before at like 20, but yeah, it's at 18 or 19. So that's a big jump. I mean, it's about a 33% jump because we're not sending the context as much. We're not sending the camera matrices more than we need to. Up here, I'm setting the texture resource and sampler only once because I'm only using one texture. And again, it's a little bit faster. It goes up to like 22, 23. Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. All right, test 4. I think this one actually made a pretty big difference. Oh yeah, so this is the one, I'm only using one model. So I only set the context for that model once instead of 10,000 times. And so now it goes up from like 23 to 29. So that's also a pretty big difference. Now we talked about how in reality, like, we're not going to have a scene of 10,000 objects, but we might be using one model a ton of times. It'd be nice if we didn't have to reset that model to the context every time we did that. If we could group them, if we group the models together when we draw them. And the last one, I don't think is a realistic scenario, but I did it anyways, where I basically said, well, in this example, I'm drawing all these cubes to the same exact spot. So I only really need to send the world matrix once. And now we're just calling render 10,000 times. And so again, not really realistic, but we do see a pretty big jump. So before it was at like 29, and now it's at 30, almost 39. That was what I saw before, 37, 38. So it's pretty big. Anyways, so I guess, obviously we don't want to send the camera matrices more than once, but in particular, I noticed that setting the context from the model made a big difference. And, setting the texture resources stuff made a difference too. Just try not to send stuff to the GPU. And again, none of these examples, all of these, I was still using the texture HLSL, which does the multiplication for the world view and projection in here. So it seems like there's optimization there that can be done there too if I move some of that out of there. Anyways, that's it.